Yo, what's up, everybody? It's spooky season. So, what better thing is there to do than to play survival horror games during spooky season? So, I finally had the luxury to play Silent Hill 2. Everybody says this is a must play survival horror game if you're into those type of games, which I am. So, let's talk about my experience playing this game. So, I actually played the HD collection version of Silent Hill 2. And right off the bat, I had to turn on those 2D controls because those 3D controls were not it. The first thing I noticed when I played this game was its ambiance is elite. Literally, as soon as you start the game, it gives you this gloomy, isolated, empty feeling. And the fog definitely helps with that too. Now, I know this game was going to be old-fashioned, fixed camera angles, kind of weird controls, but this game really did have some weird controls. On my first enemy encounter, I was pressing all these buttons, still not swinging. I bought up that map and I went to Google and I learned how to attack so quick. Came back, gave him that RuneScape combat, and let his rotisserie chicken walking ass have it. Combat in this game is a little funky, but it's pretty simple. One, I just don't like the first weapon you get because when you smack people with it, they kind of move back and they might move back to the point where you can't smack them anymore. But those issues get solved later when you get other weapons in the game, so that's a good addition. One thing I didn't like about the combat in this game is when you have to finish an enemy off, you just walk up into them and press A. Why can't I just walk up in fighting stance and smack them on the ground? I'm over here looking dumb trying to figure out how to finish an enemy off. You do a lot of walking around and exploring in Silent Hill 2. And that made me realize some of these camera angles are actually really annoying. Not all of them. And one thing with the camera angles is I realize sometimes when you enter a room and then you leave it, it ruins your sense of left and right because the camera angle's flipped. There were so many times when I left the room and I was supposed to turn left, but I turned right because I was confused. There was also this thing where you walk into a room and the camera angle changes, and let's say you're holding down, and since the camera angle changes, you're walking up, but then you still hold down to walk up. That stuff is so annoying and weird. It took me like 4 hours to get adjusted to that. But doing all that walking and exploring in Silent Hill, it really leads to some interesting stuff. So I'm walking and I randomly just run into this scene. Don't mind me, big man. I'm just looking for what time the clock is supposed to say. Some of these rooms seem to have their own character. Like the music is just so intense. And the music is different from any other room, so it really makes you think this room is special and it has some type of mystery. It'd be things like that that makes players actually want to get invested into the lore to find out things that happen here in Silent Hill. All executed by the game's top tier ambiance. You know what? Let me get out of this room because it sounds like I'm about to get murdered in this joint. One small thing I do like about this game is, if a room is dark, you can't read your map. This makes players seem lost and it forces them to remember their terrain. Since you be walking around trying to find key items and all that in this game, sometimes it just wasn't apparent with what you do with these key items. Like, why am I dropping a juice box down a trash chute? You know, I actually thought the juice box was supposed to go to Eddie. When you first hear Eddie across the hall, I'm like, what is that noise? I go to my inventory and this man is still throwing up. It made me realize one thing about this game too. Even when you pause the game, the soundtrack still plays. So if the ambiance is really creepy, if it gives you anxiety, Silent Hill is gonna do it to you. When I played this game, I was in the apartments for way too long. Like, I was in the apartments for like 3 hours. And part of the reason is because I couldn't see a path that was in a room because of the camera angles. And it was dark, but that only really happened once, so it's not a huge flaw. This game has some very interesting puzzles. Some of them are very intricate too. But for some of the puzzles, I didn't know how I was supposed to figure that out without a guide. I'm over here looking at this wall and I'm like, man, niggas are really getting killed out here. I get to the clock and I don't know what time it's supposed to be set on. Hey, you know what time the clock is supposed to say, bruh? But their names are actually hours, minutes, and seconds. I would have never thought about that, honestly. For the most part, though, the puzzles are pretty solvable and they give pretty good hints. Even though one of them I just literally pressed A anywhere and it gave me what I needed. What blew me when it wasn't even necessarily a puzzle is you go into this elevator and it says occupancy only one person. And I'm like, okay, I'm one person, I should be able to write it. And I can't. And it turns out I'm supposed to dump all my stuff on this shelf. Then you can write the elevator. I thought they were giving me a shelf for a whole storage system. They had me walking around the hotel for no reason looking dumb. I don't know what it is with some of these key items too. It's like sometimes you just don't know what to do with them. Like how was I supposed to know that taking a horseshoe, wax, and a lighter will make a makeshift handle for a hatch? Maybe some glue. They would have had me walking around the prison looking dumb again, but your boy looked at that guide. So let's talk about some of these enemies and their designs and stuff. Now, I heard on YouTube certain theories about how certain things in Silent Hill represent something to someone. First up, we have the rotisserie chicken walking ass enemies. Their design is pretty cool. It's not bad at all. Next, we have the mannequins, and these guys are just really bizarre looking, and they're kind of goofy looking. I have no idea what this is supposed to represent for James, but real rap, I wouldn't want to catch a shin to my face, because you know that joint has to hurt. These guys be making weird noises out of their mouth. Whatever hole that's supposed to be on them. Hold up, Silent Hill. Did you just throw a mannequin at me like a patty on a grill? Out of the standard enemies in this game, the nurses are definitely the scariest, by design and by nature. They're the only ones with extremely intense music behind them when they appear. The nurses in Silent Hill 2 are fast, aggressive, they like to play dead, and they be jumping you too. You know what? Wait till I come back in this room. Sorry, Miss Nurse, but you're a fucking bitch. Now, the next enemy only appeared once, and I have no idea of what it's supposed to represent. Did James have a foot fetish or something? Looking at this picture, though, it looks like they can be Pyramid Head's victims. Alright, now let's talk about the bosses. Pyramid Head is such an iconic character, but on your first encounter with him, all you really do is just dodge him. You know what? I'm about to send this man to horny jail. Honestly, Pyramid Head is not that menacing. He doesn't really do anything that makes him an immediate threat. He looks very intimidating. But I'm not gonna lie, Spear Pyramid Head, he'll shish kebab you real quick. The actual boss fight where you have to fight 2 Pyramid Heads, you just handle your business honestly. And Angela's Table Monster, I don't know what this is, but I think the design is just so kind of bland and boring. Like, what is this? Maybe it's supposed to represent something? Maybe one of you Silent Hillologists can tell me. He becomes a regular enemy too. Like, if you want that round 2, you always know the shotty's on me. The Eddie boss fight feels like it came straight out of Dead Rising. The final boss, Mary, of course she appears to be a nun. No surprise. She's in that weird frame that Pyramid Head keeps putting people into. That thing definitely has to signify something because there's too many enemies and people that's been put inside that frame. All she really does is shoot bats at you or chokes you up with that weird tentacle, whatever that's supposed to be. Interesting design we have there.
James.
Shut your ass up. One thing about this game is it has a really good soundtrack too. I heard so many people talk about how good Silent Hill 2 soundtrack is, and it lives to its hype. It does a good job at capturing the emotion of what just happened in the story. Just got done hanging out in the bar, we got a song for that. Something sad just happened in the story, we got Sad Boy James now, we got a song for that. Warping into another dimension where your deepest fears manifest themselves as a physical being, we got a song for that. So overall, Silent Hill was definitely a good experience. I really enjoyed this game, and it really is the ultimate vibe check. Did a good job at making you explore, and when you explored, you know, you found stuff that made you more interested into the lore and specific characters' backgrounds and why they're in Silent Hill. This game really felt like a survival horror game. This game did have its flaws, but I already talked about that. It didn't give too many consistent hard puzzles to the point where each puzzle took 2 hours to solve without a guide. I think the biggest thing I liked about this game though is how it takes a person's past trauma, past actions and deepest fears and it makes it personify itself somehow in Silent Hill. Then to get you even more immersed, the game gives you just complete top tier ambiance and a really good soundtrack. The game has some really interesting characters. They are all vastly different from each other, but I don't have time in this video to talk about them. I think I'm gonna do a character analysis or some type of analysis for Silent Hill 2. If you like traditional survival horror games, I definitely give this game a play. It's a really good experience. The next video is either gonna be me talking about me playing the sub scenario, Born from a Wish, or it's gonna be some type of Silent Hill analysis. And you guys already know what time it is. It's Perspective, and vibe out.